All right, everyone. So some invertebrate news for the day. This is not insect related. It's mollusks, but I worked with invasive mollusks, primarily snails and slugs, for like a decade, and they rapidly became one of my favorite subjects. So I figured I'd start including some malacology and mollusk news and things like that into this channel. Maybe eventually I'll do some of the science behind mollusks because it is super interesting. They're really weird creatures, but they're also really economically important. They're very damaging to agriculture. So this local news came out from Idaho. The State Department of Agriculture has decided to take preventative action against infestation of quagga mussels, and I guess that also would include zebra mussels if you're more familiar with those, by mandating that all out-of-state boats or boats that are moving between states and things like that have to be washed and sanitized and drained of all excess water or ballast and things like that before they can be moved, which is a really good idea. And then the second bad idea is that they have these inspection stations which they've decided to fund through stickers, which seems kind of like a money grab, but I guess they have to fund it some way. But for those of you who don't know about quagga mussels and their relative, the zebra mussels, here's a picture of the quagga. They are freshwater mussels that arrived in the United States back, I think, in the 80s. In the Great Lakes on ships that came in from the Atlantic from Eastern Europe. I think these are from Ukraine or the Black Sea, Caspian Sea, stuff like that. And these ships came in loaded with water, and the water was infested with these mollusks and their larvae called veligers, and their eggs and all this other stuff that dumped all of this into the Great Lakes, and they proceeded to then completely take over the Great Lakes. They cause a lot of issues, some good, some bad. So these mussels really reproduce so quickly that they smother pretty much all of the native mollusk species in the lakes. Not just with their rapid growth, but just with the amount of food they consume, with the amount of feces they produce. They literally smother everything. And they consume so much food that they completely shift the ecosystem in their own favor. And eventually what happens is a bunch of the native species either recede or go extinct. The bottom of these lakes and rivers become filled with feces, so you get this overgrowth of plant life on the bottom. You have a total shift in the number and type of predatory fish that are in the water. Just everything changes. But one of the kind of human impacts of this, so one of the good things they do, before we move on to even more bad things, is that because they siphon so much water, they eat so much food, they actually pull a lot of the pollution out of the water, which is great. But on the downside, they concentrate that pollution within their own flesh. And so then when fish or birds try to eat these things, they themselves become poisoned. And so they can spread botulism and all these other terrible things, which is why humans don't really eat them. They're technically edible, but you will be poisoned, probably. So one of the problems that when it comes to agriculture and infrastructure is that they reproduce so quickly that they actually begin to seal up major water inflow and outflow pipes. So it just destroys all the plumbing. They completely overgrow docks. If you have any sort of agricultural equipment that is in the water, all of that will be overgrown very, very quickly. And it's incredibly devastating. So what Idaho is doing here is they are trying to prevent further infestations of these mussels by mandating that boats and boat owners have to be cleaned before they get moved. So these large ships that originally introduced them to the United States came out of the ocean into the Great Lakes via the river system. And that's where they got introduced, but how they ended up getting spread throughout the United States, and the eastern half of the United States has been dealing with this a long time, is local boat owners basically take their boat to the lake for the day, have their fun. They don't clean their boat when it comes out of the water. So it'll have excess water trapped within the boat. It'll have some of these larvae and immature villagers, or even adults sometimes, living on the hull of the boat, and it doesn't get cleaned. And these species can tolerate being dry for several days. So then maybe a couple days later, they decide, hey, let's go to this other lake, or let's go to this river, and they take their boat to that river. And once they do that, the mollusks, the quagga mussels, the zebra mussels get spread that way. And they can spread really, really fast because of how quickly they reproduce. So that's what they're trying to do here. I think they need better educational campaigns. Most people have never heard of a zebra mussel. They've never heard of a quagga mussel, unless they've, been to a freshwater beach and had their feet sliced up by these incredibly sharp, small shells that are just lying everywhere. But people need to be educated about this. There needs to be an education campaign, and people need to be told how to prevent this, not just pass a law and make them buy a sticker, which seems kind of silly. But actually explain to people, like when they get their boating license or whatever, this is why you have to do this. This is why. This is what we're trying to prevent. But otherwise, it's a good idea, and more states need to be proactive in stopping the spread of these incredibly damaging mollusks. Talk to you later. Bye.